Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Thursday, May 2nd, 2024. President Joe Biden says that pro-Palestinian protesters on college campuses have a right to protest peacefully and that dissent is essential for democracy, but that it must never lead to disorder such as vandalism, violence, hate speech, and other chaos. President Biden visits North Carolina, first in Charlotte, meeting with the families of 4 law enforcement officers shot and killed in the line of duty, and then to Wilmington to talk about funding to remove lead pipes. Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs signs a bill repealing an 1864 law that bans nearly all abortions. The U.S. Senate continues working on the Federal Aviation Administration reauthorization, but is not expected to finish it this week. The current FAA authorization expires May 10th. Biden administration cabinet secretaries testify before Congress on proposed fiscal year 2025 budgets. We'll hear from the heads of Transportation, Interior, and Veterans Affairs. The Donald Trump hush money criminal trial resumes in New York, and the judge holds a hearing on more of Donald Trump's alleged violations of the court's gag order on attacking witnesses and jurors. And dozens of members of Congress attend the funeral of the late Congressman Donald Payne, Jr., Democrat from New Jersey, who is remembered as a dedicated public servant. CBS News writes that President Biden on Thursday said order must prevail on college campuses as some of the pro-Palestinian protests have turned violent, insisting it's his responsibility to protect the rule of law as much as freedom of expression. Over 100 people were arrested on Wednesday night at the University of California, Los Angeles, after hundreds of protesters defied police orders to leave, and about 24 hours after counter-protesters attacked the tent encampment on the campus. The chaotic night at UCLA came after arrests in New York City at Columbia University and City College. That was from CBS News. President Biden spoke from the White House.
Before I head to North Carolina, I wanted to speak for a few moments about what's going on our college campuses here. We've all seen the images, and they put to the test 2 fundamental American principles. The first is the right to free speech and for people to peacefully assemble and make their voices heard. The second is the rule of law. Both must be upheld. We are not an authoritarian nation where we silence people or squash dissent. The American people are heard. In fact, peaceful protest is in the best tradition of how Americans respond to consequential issues. But, neither are we a lawless country. We are a civil society, and order must prevail. Throughout our history, we've often faced moments like this because we are a big, diverse, free-thinking, and freedom-loving nation. In moments like this, there are always those who rush in to score political points. But this isn't a moment for politics. It's a moment for clarity. So let me be clear. Peaceful protest in America. Violent protest is not protected. Peaceful protest is. It's against the law when violence occurs. Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest. Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Dissent is essential to democracy, but dissent must never lead to disorder or to denying the rights of others so students can finish the semester and their college education. Look, it's basically a matter of fairness. It's a matter of what's right. There's the right to protest, but not the right to cause chaos. People have the right to get an education, the right to get a degree, the right to walk across the campus safely without fear of being attacked. But let's be clear about this as well. There should be no place on any campus, no place in America for anti-Semitism or threats of violence against Jewish students. There is no place for hate speech or violence of any kind, whether it's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or discrimination against Arab Americans or Palestinian Americans. It's simply wrong. There's no place for racism in America. It's all wrong. It's un-American. I understand people have strong feelings and deep convictions. In America, we respect the right and protect the right for them to express that. But it doesn't mean anything goes. It needs to be done without violence, without destruction, without hate, and within the law. And make no mistake, as president, I will always defend free speech. And I will always be just as strong in standing up for the rule of law. That's my responsibility to you, the American people, and my obligation to the Constitution. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, have the protests forced you to reconsider any of the policies with regard to the region?
No. Thank you.
Mr. President, do you think the National Guard should intervene?
No.
Mr. President,
Do you agree with what the students are calling for?
Mr. President, the former president said that he was no longer.
President Biden at the White House. Story from NBC News. The streets around the downtown jail where UCLA arrestees were being processed were closed and a crowd gathered outside the jail chanting, "Free, free Palestine." The crowd clapped and cheered as arrestees came out of the detention center. And from Axios, Republican Senate and House campaign arms are already cutting footage and ready to launch campaign ads as soon as Wednesday, slamming vulnerable Democrats for not condemning the protests that have erupted on college campuses over Israel's war in Gaza. Axios has learned the escalating tension on campuses in recent days has once again put a spotlight on one of the more sensitive and divisive issues within the Democratic Party. The National Senatorial Campaign Committee is launching ads going after Senators Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin, Sherrod Brown of Ohio, Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, John Tester of Montana, and Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin running in Michigan. Focused on anti-Semitism and campus protests, the House GOP arm is also planning to launch ads featuring protest footage and claiming Democrats cower to the whims of dangerous anti-Semites in their party. That was from Axios. Here are some of those ads. We start first from the one from the Senate Republicans targeting Senator Baldwin, and then the House Republicans.
Death to America, threatening Jews, attacking police. Anti-Semitic mobs are taking over our universities. Students radicalized by the far left, acting like terrorists. Now Joe Biden and Tammy Baldwin want you to pay off their student loans using your tax dollars to fund this mayhem? Tell Tammy Baldwin, stop caving to the woke mobs and put America first.
Anti-Semitism skyrockets.
We don't want those rackets here!
Anti-Israel protests on college campuses threaten Jewish students.
We are Hamas!
Zionists don't deserve to live.
And extreme House Democrats refuse to condemn it.
Those peaceful student-led protests on campus.
They cower to the whims of dangerous anti-Semites in their party.
When I think about the USF, it should burn! Death to America! We're all Hamas!
What do you think about Osama bin Laden in 9/11?
He did what he did because he had to do it.
I love Osama. I want to
These are their supporters. These are Hamas's supporters. Tell House Democrats it's time to stand up for Israel. It is time to stand up for what is right.
An ad put out by the Republican House Campaign Committee, and before that, one of those from the Senate Campaign Committee. Story from The Hill, more than 24 Republican senators are calling a potential proposal by President Biden to accept Palestinian refugees from Gaza a national security risk, following the administration's acknowledgement that discussions are underway to help Palestinians in the U.S. bring families over from the region. A letter rejecting the potential proposal was led by Senator Joni Ernst, Republican from Iowa, the number 3 GOP leader, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, and 33 colleagues. That from The Hill. From AP, Hamas said Thursday that it was sending a delegation to Egypt for further ceasefire talks in a new sign of progress in attempts by international mediators to hammer out an agreement between Israel and militant group to end the war in Gaza. The White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby was asked about it during a virtual online audio news conference.
Hey, John, thank you. I know you won't be able to give any details on the hostage negotiations and the offer that's on the table, but do you expect a Hamas response today? And as much as you can you detail what pressure is being put on Hamas, including by our allies and partners in the region? Thanks.
Don't know when we're going to get a response, quite frankly, Nick. We're obviously hoping for a response as soon as possible. It's a good proposal. And as Secretary Blinken said many times on his trip, they need to take it. They need to move forward on this because it could have significantly positive impacts across the region. So we'll keep watching here to see what the response is going to be from Hamas. As I noted earlier, they have not given us a response yet. And as for pressure, I would just say that we continue to be in close touch. I mean, hell, Blinken was just there in the region, in Jordan and in Israel, having these exact conversations with counterparts to continue to urge them to do everything they can to move Hamas to the right place here, and that includes conversations with Qatar. So we are absolutely having conversations, continue to do that with counterparts in the hopes that they can help move Hamas to accept this deal, so we can get these hostages out, get the aid in, get 6 weeks of a ceasefire.
White House spokesperson John Kirby during a virtual news conference. President Joe Biden, writes Reuters, said on Wednesday that xenophobia from China to Japan and India is hobbling their growth, as he argued that migration has been good for the U.S. economy. Biden spoke at a Washington fundraising event for his 2024 re-election campaign, marking the start of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about it on Air Force One.
The word xenophobic is a very pejorative and negative word, particularly to use against an ally. Is that what he meant?
Look, the president was very clear, and I think...
He wasn't very clear. I mean, that's why we're asking you.
Well, look, here's what I'm saying. He was talking about who we are as a country, right? He was talking about the importance about being in a country of immigrants, especially as you see the attacks that we have seen very recently in the last couple of years on those attacks on immigrants in particular. And so it is important for us to remember that we are a country of immigrants. I'm explaining what he was talking about and how he was what he was focusing on in those comments. Country of immigrants, it makes us stronger. It is important to be very clear about that. And the president's always going to be really clear on speaking to issues that matter to the American people. We are a country of immigrants, that matters, and we've seen these attacks, and so the president's never going to shy away from that.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre taking reporters' questions on Air Force One. An NBC News article on what the president said yesterday has this: Japan ranked 35th out of 56 countries in the 2020 Migrant Integration Policy Index, which categorized the country's approach as immigration without integration. Researchers said foreign nationals in Japan were denied equal opportunities and several basic rights, especially protection from discrimination, putting it far behind other developed countries. That was from NBC. This is Washington Today. From AP in Phoenix, Arizona is waving goodbye to a Civil War-era ban of nearly all abortions as a repeal bill reaches the desk of Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs. Hobbs says the repeal, scheduled for signing on Thursday, is just the beginning of a fight to protect reproductive health care in Arizona. But the repeal may not take effect until 90 days after the end of the legislative session in June or July. Abortion rights advocates hope a court will step in to prevent that outcome. The effort to repeal the ban won final legislative approval Wednesday in a 16-14 vote of the Senate as two GOP lawmakers joined with Democrats. That was from Associated Press. Here is Governor Hobbs signing the bill into law.
Almost a month ago, I stood in this very room detailing the dangers of the Arizona Supreme Court's decision to uphold the 1864 total abortion ban. In the weeks since, we've seen women and healthcare providers suffer from the chaos and confusion caused by this ruling. I've heard from doctors who were unsure if they would wind up in a jail cell for simply doing their job. Women who told me they didn't know if it was safe to start a family here in Arizona. These excruciating conversations are exactly why I have made one thing clear, very clear. This ban needs to be repealed. I said it in 2022 when Roe was overturned. and I've said it again and again as governor. But as they have for 160 years, extreme politicians came up with every excuse imaginable to maintain this draconian ban. A ban that was passed by 27 men before Arizona was even a state. A time when America was at war over the right to own slaves. A time before women could even vote. Today, we are doing what 23 governors and 55 legislatures refused to do, and I'm so proud to be the ones that got this job done. And while I'm proud to sign this bill and provide a moment of relief for Arizonans, we still have work to do. Arizona women are still governed by a ban that leaves no exceptions for rape or incest, nor does it account for complications during pregnancy. We do not have guarantees that the basic right to contraception or access to IVF are protected, even as threats mount. Today, we should not rest, but we should recommit to protecting women's bodily autonomy, their ability to make their own healthcare decisions, and the ability to control their lives. Let me be clear. I will do everything in my power to protect our reproductive freedoms because I trust women to make the decisions that are best for them. And I know that politicians do not belong in the doctor's office.
Governor Katie Hobbs, Democrat from Arizona, signing the bill into law in Phoenix. The Arizona Senate passed the repeal of the 1864 abortion law on Thursday. Arizona's House did so last week. During the Senate debate, Senator Justine Wadsack explained why she voted no.
The media who has descended into our state from thousands of miles away is here to promote one cause and one cause only: abortion until birth, 9 months. I think they need to be a lot like Bill Maher and say it like it is. He rightly stated, those like me who are pro-life are not anti-woman. That's just made up. We do think that abortion, like Planned Parenthood, is desperately trying to legalize in this state up until 9 months, and it is murder. And those who are on the side of Planned Parenthood are just okay with that. Abortion until 9 months. And I appreciate Bill Maher's honesty. After listening to the many different types of pregnancies that one can have, I've had 3, and I have 2 children. The first one, I saw the beating heart of a little kidney bean on a sonogram, and I chose life. She's amazing. She's given me my first grandson. The second one I lost. It was a miscarriage. God chose when that heartbeat was going to stop. And then it took 10 years for me to have my second live birth. It is not my job as a state senator to determine when a child's heart stops beating, and with that I vote no.
Arizona State Senator Justine Wadsack, a Republican, during the debate in Phoenix on Wednesday on repealing the near-total abortion ban bill from the 19th century. The repeal passed. It had passed the House last week, and Governor Hobbs signed it into law today. It takes effect in 90 days. Again, from the Associated Press, the 19th century law had been blocked since the U.S. Supreme Court's 1973 Roe v. Wade decision guaranteed the constitutional right to an abortion nationwide. After Roe v. Wade was overturned in June 2022, then Arizona Attorney General, a Republican, persuaded a state judge that the 1864 ban could be enforced. Still, the law hasn't actually been enforced while the case was making its way through the courts. A repeal means that a 2022 statute banning the procedure after 15 weeks pregnancy would become Arizona's prevailing abortion law. That was from Associated Press. The U.S. Senate took another procedural vote today on the bill to reauthorize the Federal Aviation Administration for 5 years. It passed 81-10. The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said on the Senate floor he hoped that a vote on final passage is not that far off.
Today, the Senate will continue to move forward on FAA reauthorization. We just have 8 days to go before the current FAA authorization expires, so it will take bipartisan cooperation to get this done before the deadline. Both parties have every reason in the world to get FAA done as quickly as possible and as smoothly as possible, to keep our skies safe, our airports safe, our federal employees taken care of. I hope the Senate can come together to get this important legislation finished.
The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, on the Senate floor. An article from Politico, the Senate Minority Whip John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, told Politico on Thursday he believes Congress will likely need to pass a short-term extension to the FAA reauthorization bill ahead of next week's deadline. He said, "We're heading to later in the week. Next week, we're going to be up against the deadline, and it seems unlikely that we're going to have this transacted before we hit that deadline. There aren't enough days right now, in my view, at least for us to be able to finish this." Negotiations over the FAA reauthorization have been littered with amendment requests. It is the last piece of major legislation the Senate has to address until the fall, making it the last opportunity for members to try and tack on their policy priorities. That was from Politico. The Senate is done for the week, back for business next Tuesday. The current authorization for the FAA expires May 10th. Cabinet secretaries continue to testify before congressional committees about the president's proposed fiscal year 2025 budget. C-SPAN today covered the secretaries of Transportation, Interior, and Veterans Affairs. The Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was before a Senate Appropriations Subcommittee. The president's requesting $25.4 billion for that department. Senator Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, asked Secretary Buttigieg about rebuilding the collapsed Key Bridge in Baltimore. The committee says it's expected to cost at least $2 billion.
I want to talk to you about the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge because it brought to light some serious potential vulnerabilities of other bridges that were built prior to the regulations requiring the use of barriers to protect pillars. Now, it's my understanding that as far back as the 1970s, the National Transportation Safety Board recommended studying which existing bridges had inadequate structural pier protection. So we clearly need to have a better understanding of how many other bridges there are out there that could be subjected to the same sort of catastrophic collapse. What has your department been doing to identify these bridges in the light of the Baltimore Bridge collapse? And do you have a comprehensive list?
Thank you, and we are very focused on this. As you note, there has been attention to this for decades, particularly after a similarly catastrophic bridge impact in 1980 in Florida, which gave rise to the AASHTO standards, which federal regulations pay attention to. They require that new bridge construction projects consider the need for and the design of pier protection. I do want to take care to preface anything else I say by acknowledging that the NTSB operates independently from us. They are, of course, independently assessing the causes of this incident. And it is too soon to know whether any bridge design currently known could have withstood a direct impact of the 248 million pounds that went into that pier. But bridges have increasingly been designed with what are called dolphins, fenders, or islands around their supports in order to mitigate the impact of a potential collision. I think that even as NTSB continues their work, we will be able to continue our dialogue with AASHTO on the standards that they have. And while there is not an inventory of bridges that is scoped for analysis based on what size vessel impact at what speed each of them might be able to withstand. I think we do need to assess where the most critical points are, where we would prioritize investment in the resilience of the legacy infrastructure that we have, much as we've made investments, for example, in the seismic resilience of some bridges through the bridge investment or protect programs.
Thank you.
Senator Susan Collins, Republican from Maine, questioning Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg at today's Appropriations Subcommittee hearing. The Interior Secretary Deb Haaland testified before the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, and the chair, Joe Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia, asked her about energy policy important to his state.
In the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, Congress gave you a statutory deadline to issue a final offshore carbon capture and storage regulations by November 22, okay? November 22, we're 2 years down the road. You missed that deadline and continue to delay each year. All the science tells us we cannot meet our climate goals without carbon capture sequestration. And given the administration's focus on decarbonization, this initiative should be a top priority, which we made it a top priority in about every piece of legislation that we had done, yet a draft rule has not even been published yet. So when do you think you will publish a proposed rule for comment, since we're 2 years behind already?
Chairman, thank you for the question. And as you can imagine, creating a new regulatory program for a new applied technology is creating, it's very technical and it's very complex. We want to make sure we're doing a good job. We're consulting with the industry, with other government agencies and countries to ensure efficient and comprehensive process. We don't have an actual estimated time for this to be completed, but I want to assure you that we are working on it.
How much CO2 has a 3-year delay that's been left unsequestered? I mean, do you have any idea how much is out there that we're not sequestering?
I couldn't answer that at the moment, but of course we would be happy to give you a status update on where we are with this, and know that our scientists.
Let me make it very clear that the people that are producing records amount today and makes us more energy secure than ever before. You know, that we produce 38 trillion cubic feet of gas. 4.7 billion cubic feet, billion barrels, 4.7 billion barrels of oil last year. We produced 14 billion cubic feet of LNG. We did more solar and more battery storage than ever before. So it's an all-in energy process that we have. I've just tried to make the rational evaluation that we are all understanding there's a transition coming. And we have to be part of that transition, and gas and oil and all of this, but we have to do it cleaner and better, and we can. But if the administration's fighting us on sequestration, then it's an oxymoron saying we can't do that because you're still putting out CO2 because you won't give us, we can't get Class 6 well permits. We have 128 pending. Only 2's been provided. Yet we're willing to go ahead and start collecting fines on companies that are still producing CO2 because they can't get a permit. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. We're fighting our own selves of energy security, and we're not going to be able to switch for the public. There's no way that we can switch before we have something that'll do exactly what dispatchable fossil is doing, 24/7 production of energy. That's just common sense too. For the superpower of the world, for the rest of the world's security that we have and our allies are depending on it. And every time we displace Venezuela, I think we've gone back and forth on Venezuelan oil, and now with still turning a blind eye to the ghost ships coming out of Iran that uses their profits to support Hamas and his terrorist operations around the world. It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever why we would be doing that when we produce it in the Gulf cleaner than anyone. So if we displace by producing more, it's good for the environment. But we're having a hard time.
Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia, chair of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, questioning Interior Secretary Deb Haaland. Story from the New York Times. President Biden on Thursday expanded the perimeters of 2 national monuments in California, protecting mountains and meadows in a remote area between Napa and Mendocino, as well as a rugged stretch east of Los Angeles. The San Gabriel Mountains National Monument and the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument each have new boundaries designed to preserve land that holds cultural significance for Native American tribes and that is teeming with biodiversity, as well as wildlife corridors. reporting from the New York Times. Back in Washington, the Veterans Affairs Secretary Dennis McDonough testified before Senate Appropriations Subcommittee about the budget request for fiscal year 2025 for his department. Senator Lisa Murkowski, Republican from Alaska, asked him about the benefits claims backlog, which the VA website defines as claims that take longer than 125 days to process.
I'm curious about where we are with the claims backlog and the claims inventory and the backlog, because I'm told that following the PACT Act, we've seen that increase dramatically. We've also seen the claims accuracy backlog. I'm told that the accuracy rate has dropped to just over 83%, the lowest it's been in the last 10 years. I don't know if this is directly related to the claims backlog, what we're seeing with the increase, but know that this is an issue that our veterans are raising in Alaska. I'm sure that they are in other states as well. So I don't know if you can give us an update on that.
Definitely. Thanks for the question. Backlog as of this morning was just over 300,000 claims.
How does that stack?
Yeah, inventory is about 930,000 claims. So we're at, I think, if I remember that right, but I'll get you the specific number by close of business today. But we're at about a 31% backlog rating. Of the overall inventory, about 31% of the claims are backlogged. That's generally in the zone of what we have considered healthy for backlog, because we're not going to rush to get a no to a veteran if more development will get us to yes. That's the first thing. Second, we did anticipate, by the way, we've been able to manage this. This is kind of much on the low end of what we anticipated and frankly what our model told us the backlog would be by now. And it could be, by the way, that we're on the downside of the backlog, but it's too soon to definitively state that. The main input there is people, and we've basically increased the VBA workforce by about 25% in the last 3 years, anticipating this influx of claims. So
Has that impacted the accuracy because you're bringing new people on?
Correct. So that's the last point, and this is where I'm not sure where 83% comes. I just got an update yesterday. We're at 93%. But there, frankly, we have a dispute with our IG too about he scores our accuracy differently. So I don't want to over-index the number, but there is quality concerns, which we anticipated because of so many new people and because of the training requirements. So we have throughout the course of the summer a quality stand down, which will increase enhanced training and an update of the training program to review these quality questions. Because again, this is traditional seesaw in VA. We worry about the backlog when it grows, so we over-index on the backlog number. So then all of a sudden quality comes down. So we have to kind of toggle back and forth between these two things. We've anticipated this. I hope the stand down that we're going to undertake over the course of this summer addresses that. And again, that's a training issue, and then that's an oversight and management issue. And again, because we're seeing the same thing in VBA, enhanced retention of our personnel, I feel pretty good about our ability to address that.
Thank you for your attention to this. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Testimony from the Veterans Affairs Secretary Dennis McDonough. Questions from Senator Lisa Murkowski, Republican from Alaska, at an Appropriations Subcommittee hearing. The news site The War Horse reports that U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs has signed up more than 280,000 new veterans and completed roughly 900,000 new toxic exposure claims under the expansion of the PACT Act, a Biden administration move that sped up the implementation of a 2023 law aimed at securing benefits for veterans exposed to burn pits overseas. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Hi, it's Kayla from C-SPAN. Imagine 45 years ago when there was just a handful of television networks. C-SPAN first went on the air bringing an unfiltered view of government directly to America's living rooms. No spin, no commentary, just pure democracy in action.
And it's Greta from C-SPAN. It was a bold experiment. We finally had a front row seat to Congress, the White House, and the campaign trail. all without government funding.
As we celebrate 45 years and a legacy of unfiltered access, we ask for your support of a donation in honor of our 4 decades of service. Your gift, no matter how big or small, will help maintain this vital resource for access to the democratic process.
You can help ensure another 45 years of witnessing history unfold and empowering citizens to be informed and engaged in the political process. Visit cspan.org/donate today and join our 45th anniversary campaign.
Thank you for supporting C-SPAN, your unfiltered view of government. Visit cspan.org/donate today to make your gift of support. Thank you.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the C-SPAN Now mobile app. It's free and wherever you find your podcasts. President Biden went to North Carolina today, first stop in Charlotte, to meet the families of 4 law enforcement officers who were shot and killed after a man wanted for possession of a firearm as an ex-felon opened fire on a joint agency task force sent to arrest him. The president also meeting with officers who were wounded in that exchange. The White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre spoke to reporters on Air Force One.
So as you all know, we're on our way to Charlotte, where the president will meet with the families of the law enforcement officers who were killed in the line of duty, as well as those who were wounded. As the president said, these are heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice to rush into harm's way to protect us. We mourn for the fallen heroes and their loved ones, and we pray for the recoveries of the courageous officers who were wounded. As you've heard the president say many times, we must do more to protect our law enforcement officers. That means providing them with the resources they need to do their jobs and keep us safe. And it means taking additional action to combat gun violence and prevent future tragedies.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre on Air Force One. Associated Press writes the meeting took place with little fanfare behind closed doors as the White House wanted President Biden to be seen as respecting the privacy of grieving families and avoiding the appearance of using their grief for political purposes. House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, posting today on X, on this National Day of Prayer, Kelly and I join our country in praying that God will continue to bless America, and we especially pray today for our law enforcement and troops who keep our streets and our nation safe. President Biden also went to Wilmington, North Carolina, to announce $3 billion in grants to replace lead pipes across the country. That's on top of the $5.8 billion announced in February. The EPA Administrator Michael Regan was also on Air Force One.
Listen, I'm really excited to join the president today for this big announcement. As you all know, this is the 3rd installment of 5. We are giving out or investing into grants that will amount to $15 billion in total. This is the 3rd year, so the president has already put out $9 billion to erase these lead service lines in our country. It's a really big step. We all know that there is absolutely no safe level of lead in our drinking water. It has tremendous disadvantages and impacts on our children and our elderly especially. And so today is a really good day to make this announcement, and glad to be joining the president.
EPA Administrator Michael Regan on Air Force One. The money comes from the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure law the president signed in 2021 that has $50 billion for water infrastructure upgrades. Former President Donald Trump, the Republican presidential likely nominee this year, was back in court in New York City for his hush money criminal trial. On the way in, he spoke about the economy and his expected opponent in the presidential race, current Democratic President Joe Biden.
People are asking me about the economy. It's doing terribly, and interest rates are obviously not going to be able to be reduced prior to the election because inflation is roaring back. Gasoline's way up, other things are way up, and it's roaring back like they are very surprised. I'm not surprised, but they're surprised. I guess they're surprised. That's what they say anyway. So that's on the economy. It looks pretty bleak for interest rates, and I don't think there's any way they can cut them because inflation, remember, is a country buster. When you have inflation, that breaks countries. I mean, literally breaks countries, and we can't take that chance. So we'll see what they do, but it was sort of announced yesterday they can't do much with the interest rates. They'll have to remain very high, and it's very unfortunate. We had low interest rates, they have high interest rates. That's very unfortunate. When you compare my economy to this economy, not even a contest. We had the greatest economy in history. and now we have sort of a lousy economy, but the problem with the economy is the inflation, and anything you made, you more than gave back. We call it a 50% tax. It's a Biden tax. It's called an inflationary tax, and it's about 50%, and that's what it is, whether you like it or not, and it's too bad.
Former President Donald Trump. Wall Street today, the Dow up 322, NASDAQ up 235, S&P up 45. Governor Kristi Noem, Republican from South Dakota, is defending her now well-publicized decision 20 years ago to shoot and kill her 14-month-old dog because she says the dog was extremely dangerous. The account is in her soon-to-be-published memoir. Governor Noem was on Fox News Channel Wednesday night.
This was a working dog, and it was not a puppy. It was a dog that was extremely dangerous. It had come to us from a family who had found her way too aggressive. We were her second chance, and the day she was put down was a day that she massacred livestock that were part of our neighbors. She attacked me, and it was a hard decision. And the reason it's in the book is because this book is filled with tough, challenging decisions that I've had to make throughout my life. And I hope that people understand from this that what the point of this story is that most politicians, they will run from the truth. They will shy away and hide from making tough decisions. I don't do either of those. I tell the truth and I make tough decisions. People attacked me during COVID for keeping my state open. They called me wrong and attacked me night after night on TV for not doing mandates and not forcing people to get vaccines or wear masks. They're doing it again now with this. I just hope people will read the book, find out the truth, because this was a dangerous animal. And I had a choice between keeping my small children and other people safe or a dangerous animal, and I chose the safety of my children.
Governor Kristi Noem, Republican from South Dakota, on Fox News Wednesday night. Congressman Jared Moskowitz, Democrat from Florida, posting today on X, in light of recent events, we're launching the Congressional Dog Lovers Caucus today. This group, dedicated to man's best friend, aims to foster bipartisan cooperation and will help put pause over politics. And included on that post, photos of Moskowitz and fellow House members Nancy Mace, Republican from South Carolina, and Susan Wild, Democrat from Pennsylvania, each holding a dog. Funeral service today for the late Congressman Donald Payne Jr., Democrat from New Jersey, at Cathedral Basilica of the Sacred Heart in Newark, New Jersey. Congressman Payne died last week at the age of 65, 2 weeks after suffering a cardiac event related to his longtime struggle with diabetes. He first won his seat in Congress in 2012. The House not in session today in Washington, so members could attend the funeral, and dozens did. Several spoke, including the House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries from neighboring New York.
Now, about a year or so ago, I had a conversation with him on the House floor. We all knew where he's seated. We all would often have conversations with him. And he said, Hakeem, I think I have found my niche in Congress. I said, Don, you found your niche in Congress. What do you mean? He said, well, you are in leadership. Joyce was the CBC chair. Stephen is the CBC chair. Everybody loves Robin Kelly. Mark Vesey's doing his thing on energy and commerce. I need a niche. I think I found my niche. I said, but Donald, you have actually passed more bills than almost anyone else from our class, and we came in with more than 75 members. I said, Don, you're a prolific legislator. He said, I never thought about it like that. Donald Payne didn't seek glory, and so it's up to us to tell his story. We got to tell his story. We got to tell his story. He didn't seek glory. We got to tell his story. So I said, Don, well, other than being a prolific legislator, tell me about this revelation. He said, well, and he hunched up a little bit, said, I can't. I'm going to be the Michael Jordan of 1-minute speeches on the House floor. And that's exactly what he did. more speeches than any other member of this Congress, not simply to make a point, but to make a difference on behalf of the people and the issues that he cared about.
The House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, at the funeral service today for the late Congressman Donald Payne Jr., Democrat from New Jersey, was held in Newark, New Jersey. The New Jersey Globe has an article, "The Death of Congressman Payne Creates an Open Congressional Seat in New Jersey's 10th District that will be filled under extraordinary circumstances. The filing deadline has passed, and Payne is unopposed in the June 4th Democratic primary. Filling his seat is both easy. Roughly 1,084 Democratic county committee members will pick the new member of Congress, and at the same time complicated, since Governor Phil Murphy could theoretically call a freestanding special election to fill Payne's unexpired term." That reporting from the New Jersey Globe. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Subscribe to C-SPAN's free evening newsletter word for word, and you'll get the stories making headlines in Washington sent to your inbox every day. Sign up at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.